Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903.
As a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor, and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Happy Tuesday, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I am always so excited when I can have on Congressman Jim Jordan, who is fighting the good fight and always calling out the Democrats for all of their crazy unconstitutional ideas. And so, Congressman Jim Jordan, one of those things that you called out along with several other stalwart Republicans last week was against this attempt to federalize elections. So talk about that letter and why this is so important. Election integrity is one of the biggest things that people are so concerned about.
Well, they sure are. I think the fundamental question, Jenna, is why are federal government agencies submitting voter registration plans to Joe Biden's White House? I mean, elections are state issues. What are federal agencies involved in this idea of registering voters at all in the first place? So I think that's sort of the fundamental concern. Let states run this, and let states do it in a way that's consistent with our Constitution. That's been our concern, our concern about the 2020 election. So I think that's the fundamental question we ask, and they won't turn over any of the information. We want to know what kind of plans do they submit to you? What is this, the domestic policy advisor at the White House who's getting this information according to his executive order clear back last February? What is going on here? We'd like to see. And of course, they're stonewalling and not letting us see the information. So that just raises even more concerns.
Yeah. And, Molly Hemingway wrote a great piece in the Federalist last week that was talking about this very same issue. And I think it should raise red flags and huge concerns when the executive branch is asking for all of these plans, and yet they're not willing to openly share them. What does that signal to you and to Congress?
Well, this is typical of the Biden administration. We've sent countless letters to the Biden DOJ saying we want to know all the back and forth between the Justice Department and the White House on the parents and the school boards issue, for goodness sake. We know they coordinated before Merrick Garland ever sent out the initial memo. So this is just this is standard operating procedure, unfortunately, for this administration. And the same thing applies here. And understand the backdrop. I mean, in the 2020 election, in the run-up to that election, we know the Democrats used the virus as an excuse to make unconstitutional changes to their election law in the key swing states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia. I always use Pennsylvania as the example. The Constitution is clear. State legislatures make the election law. They're the ones who establish election law in their respective state. But what happened in Pennsylvania is they said, well, we're going to go around the legislature. We're going to go to the Supreme Court run by Democrats and say, even though the state legislature had said and the law said election ends at 8 o'clock Tuesday, the state Supreme Court, as you well know, Jenna, said, oh, no, we're going to change that. The election now ends 5 o'clock Friday. And they just extended the election for 3 days after Tuesday's voting. And they said any mail-in ballots come in. State law also said in that state that every ballot has to have signature. Every voter has to have signature verification. Every ballot has to have signature verification. But the Secretary of State in Pennsylvania said, no, not for the 2.1 million people who voted by mail in that election. So that's sort of the backdrop. Now we have the Biden administration, the White House, the domestic policy advisor, because of the executive order Joe Biden issued, telling federal agencies, work with anyone you interact with, work with them on voter registration. And we just want to know, what does that mean? How is that all working in practice based on our concerns about what happened in the run up to the 2020 election as well?
Yeah, and this is an extremely valid concern. And it's something, looking forward to it's 3.5 months until the midterm elections. Is there anything that Congress is concerned about, and you're specifically concerned about, that the executive branch and the federal government could try to implement ahead of the midterms that would have the same effect, the same practical effect that the COVID pretext had on the 2020 election?
Well, again, we don't know. That's why we asked. But when you look at the history and you look at what the recent history of this administration going after their political opponents, as evidenced by what they did to moms and dads who had the courage to show up at a school board meeting and express concern about what was being taught to their son or daughter. When you put all that history together, that's why we're concerned about it and why we ask the questions. We don't know specifically what they might be up to. We just know this is a state issue. You got an executive order asking every federal agency to look for ways to increase voter registration. Look, I'm all for greater voter participation. Let the political parties do that. Democrat Party wants to do that. Republican Party wants to do that. That's fine. Let people on the local level, not-for-profits, let church groups, let anyone who wants to work on voter registration and get out the vote drives and all that kind of stuff. That's fine, but it's not supposed to be the federal government and federal agencies doing that. It's supposed to be people and those kind of not-for-profits and those kind of support groups out there across the country in the respective states, because it's a state issue.
Yeah, and that's so well said. And I think that we're seeing a few courageous judges, like we saw in Wisconsin with the Supreme Court decisions, saying, okay, all of these 500 plus unmanned drop boxes are illegal according to state law. And they went back to state law. But this was then after the fact. And what a lot of people were frustrated with was that, okay, that now has an effect moving forward, but it wasn't retroactive and it didn't change anything about the calculation of the 2020 election. So it seems like with this shroud over whatever the Biden administration and the federal government is doing, people are concerned that this is going to have an effect on 2022. We won't know about it until after the election. And then the courts will say, oh, well, doctrine of latches or, some other thing. And oh, too bad. So is there any type of effort that you're aware of with the Republican National Committee or even on the state level that's trying to investigate this as well for some potential lawsuits on this ahead of the 2022 midterms?
I'm not aware of any. That's something I think you make a good point, something we should investigate and look into further. But our concern is, and why we did the letter, why we've asked for this information, we spell out a number of things we'd like to see. I just want to know, okay, if it's all being sent, if you're supposed to report back to the domestic policy advisor at the White House, that's a key position in the White House. If you're supposed to give this information back to the administration and to that key individual in the administration, what is it? Why so secretive? If it's all about just getting more people registered to vote, well, that's apple pie, God bless America stuff. Why the secrecy then? Let us know what's going on. That is our biggest concern, and why we continue to press for the information we asked for in the letter.
Yeah, a lack of transparency usually signals something nefarious. And so what if they just say no, or they stall and they say, oh, we'll let the clock run out, 3.5 months, whatever, we'll just continue to basically ignore this letter. What's your next move?
Well, I think we're going to look. We never want to be overconfident, but I feel good about the election coming up. I think this administration has done literally everything wrong. They're doing everything wrong, and so much of it, I believe, is deliberately, intentionally premeditated. I mean, the fact that we no longer have a border, the fact that they drove up the cost of energy, which we know is going to drive up inflation. We now have a 41-year high inflation. The attacks on our First Amendment, Second Amendment rights, so they haven't done anything right. So I think we're going to win, even with the games they may or may not try to play. We just would like to know what this is all about, because as you said just a few minutes ago, because of the history and the concerns we had about what Pennsylvania did and what other states did in the run up to the 2020 election, we'd like to know what if anything is going on here.
Yeah, and I think those are the same questions that people need to be asking on the local level as well, and why,
Good point.
we've encouraged people, here at the Salem Podcast Network, everywhere else, we've tried to encourage people to come out and volunteer as poll watchers, election officials.
Right.
I mean, get involved in your local elections. Don't just sit back and say, well, I hope that somebody somewhere knows what's going on. It's incumbent upon everybody in every state, not just to get out and vote, but to also make sure they're participating.
Yeah, no, well said. And remember, about a year ago, 10 months ago, the conventional wisdom was that Terry McAuliffe was going to be the next governor of Virginia. Mm-hmm. But that didn't happen because conservative people went out and voted. And frankly, let's just be honest, parents, moms and dads. I mean, the Democrats ran such a crazy campaign. They ran a campaign that basically said, we think government is smarter than parents. And a lot of moms and dads said, I don't think so. And they came out in a strong way. And that whole school board issue was, I think, the key issue that actually put Glenn Youngkin in the governor's office, and thank the good Lord for that. So I do think we're in tune. We're watching conservative, Republican, America First voters across the country are watching all this, and I feel good about the upcoming election. But we would still like to know what in the heck the federal government may be up to regarding this executive order to federal agencies trying to increase voter participation and reporting back to the domestic policy advisor at the White House.
Yeah, and you should know. I mean, that should be a very basic question. And they go, oh, yeah, sure. Here's all the information. I mean, this seems very basic. But again, the Biden administration has done everything wrong. And it seems like the Democrats are trying purposefully just to take advantage of their majorities and to try to go as extreme progressive as possible. So there's a vote coming up tomorrow on a Second Amendment issue.
Yep.
That's really concerning. What is that all about?
Well, it's unconstitutional. It's about taking away your firearms, taking away your Second Amendment liberties, plain and simple. I mean, the Second Amendment is real clear. The government shall not infringe on your ability to own a firearm, on your right to bear arms. So it doesn't say like, oh, certain type of weapons. The government will not infringe on your right to bear arms, except if it's a so-called assault weapon, which is a made-up term that the left has. It doesn't say that. So this is a direct attack on the Second Amendment, and this comes after. They told us just 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks ago that they're going to pass this red flag law concept, which is also an infringement on your Second Amendment rights, and maybe just as importantly, an infringement on due process, because that legislation said someone doesn't like you, they report you to a judge or to law enforcement. There's a hearing within 24 hours where they can, without you being there, without you being charged with the crime, without your lawyer being present, they can charge you with they can say that you're not fit to own a firearm, and they can take your weapon, take your property, and in essence, deny you your Second Amendment liberties, and then you have to go petition the court to get it back. I mean, that is not how America is supposed to work. So that was passed a few weeks ago, and now here they come with this legislation designed to take weapons, take your guns, take your Second Amendment liberties from you as a law-abiding citizen. So I'm adamantly opposed to this, and we're going to fight this as strongly as we possibly can.
Well, and I think the American people are very glad to hear that, because as you just mentioned, when I was looking over the legislation and in the summary, it says assault rifle. I'm going, okay, so they can't even define their terms. It's like defining, what is a woman? They can't define anything. They just want to have these, kind of vague things that they can manipulate and then put into legislation however they prefer the outcome to be, with all of these really vague sorts of terms that give them ultimate authority that, as you said, is nowhere in the Constitution. So where is the legislation at this point? And so the vote, it's my understanding it's in the Senate tomorrow. Is that correct?
No. It's going to be in Wednesday. It's going to be in the Judiciary Committee in the House. We'll have a markup on that, and then I think they're going to move it to the floor either later this week or next week. So it's the way the Democrats operate. When it comes to taking away your rights, they move those things on the fast track, which is scary. So we'll make the arguments that this is unconstitutional. When they did this so-called assault weapons ban back in 20-some years ago, didn't work. Studies show it didn't impact, didn't work in any way in reducing the number of these terrible, evil crimes that happen where someone shoots multiple individuals. So didn't work, and they have a buyback provision in this legislation where the government's going to go buy people, pay people to give the so-called assault weapons and give their firearms to the government. Just a terrible idea, unconstitutional. We need to just say no to this. The Second Amendment means what it says, and we should defend it.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And it's so frustrating when you see legislation like this that's coming on the heels of the Supreme Court and what I think was one of Justice Thomas's best opinions when the Supreme Court for the first time in over a decade has reiterated the fundamental right of the individual to keep and bear arms. I mean, it's very clear, and it's just right there. And so now the Democrats, pre 2020 and pre President Trump having a conservative majority on the court, the court was sacrosanct and whatever it was, that's super precedent. But now that we have Dobbs, now that we have the Supreme Court actually conserving our rule of law, now all of a sudden they're going, we can just totally ignore the Supreme Court. They're illegitimate. We need to, have all of the justices removed and impeached. I mean, it's so ridiculous. And so how much do you think this type of rhetoric from, the AOCs of Congress, is that going to actually get any sort of traction on some of these types of impeachment concerns?
Well, it's now basically a tenet of the left that their plan is to intimidate the court, and everyone on the left has joined in, including I think in some ways you could even say the Justice Department in the Biden administration is an active participant in this effort to intimidate our highest court, because they fail to prosecute anyone who protests at a Supreme Court justice's home, which is in direct violation of a statute. And look, we want to have the most robust First Amendment we can have. We know what big tech and others do to conservatives and the attack on the misinformation, disinformation, governance board. So I'm all for that. But we have a specific statute, and understand prior to the Dobbs decision, after the leaked draft opinion, that's when the intensity and the intimidation, the protests really picked up. That was specifically designed to intimidate the court and change their decision from what the draft opinion, that leaked opinion said. So that's an effort to influence a court while a case is pending, and the Justice Department refused to act. Nancy Pelosi refused for 4 weeks to give additional security protection to Supreme Court justices' families, even after they posted Justice Barrett's school where her children attend and the church where they go on Sunday mornings, even though after they posted that. So you're now this concerted effort by the left to intimidate the court because of these important constitutional decisions they have made recently. I think that's a dangerous thing when you have a separate and equal branch of government being intimidated by the left and using the executive branch and the legislative branch, it seems to me, to participate in that effort.
Yeah, that's so well said. And, there's now this effort from the Democrats as well that they're saying, well, now we need to federalize and codify Roe versus Wade into federal statute. And, AOC has this letter that she and a few of the other Democrats put out last week as well, saying, well, we want to remove the authority from the Supreme Court to even adjudicate or have jurisdiction over abortion. I'm like, they were kind of ahead of you on that. That's literally what they did. Did you read the opinion?
Yeah.
But so looking forward in, just the 3.5 months until the midterms, and I'm right there with you. I think that hopefully the Republicans, the conservatives will take back the House and have the majority, at least, both the House and the Senate. But is there time, and do you think that there is a willingness on the part of the Democrats to actually push through any sort of notions that are contrary to Dobbs?
Well, last week they had their bill, which just I guess codified their radical position. This would allow the taking of an unborn child's life right up until their birthday. This would overrule any type of state law provisions that require parental consent. It was such a radical, and never forget, the Democrats are the ones who have the radical position on the life issue. They're the ones who think that right up until birth, right up until that little child's birthday, that there can be an abortion. They're the ones who think that parents shouldn't be involved in a decision of this magnitude if a minor has an unwanted pregnancy. They're the ones who even had the former Democrat governor of Virginia who said even after their birthday that we might want to think about. I mean that is the radical position of the Democrats. So I think it's important that we always point that out. And what the Supreme Court said is, I think in simple terms, it was a win for the Constitution. It was a win for the sanctity of life. It was a win for common sense. It said, we're going to let the states, the legislature and the states, all 50 of them, figure this out. And it is a political question. Many states like ours have already got laws in place that now that say if there's a heartbeat for that little unborn child, we're going to protect that child. I mean, good common sense things that I think the vast majority of the country understands. So that's where we want to go.
Yeah, and that's just so reasonable. And I think that the left, now that they're actually having to defend their arguments for abortion on the merits, they are showing that they can't, and that it is such an absurd position. They can't just invoke, oh, Roe versus Wade, it's a decided opinion, and that's it. And so, last question that I have for you, Congressman Jim Jordan, is your colleague over in the Senate, Ted Cruz, went viral for saying, there are some other decisions now that we should look at, such as Obergefell versus Hodges, and, some of these other cases where the Supreme Court under the left has kind of extended these notions of taking away the ability for the states to decide these issues for themselves. And, before the same-sex marriage decision, 31 states had constitutional amendments that affirmed that they would only recognize marriage between one man and one woman. So what, in your opinion, should we be looking at all of this? Where should this go?
Well, the court was really clear that they said, Alito Ayi emphasized it. He said nothing in this decision should be read to speak on anything other than the issue in front of us, which was the issue about protecting the sanctity of human life and leaving that to the states. So I think the Supreme Court was clear. Justice Thomas, in his concurring opinion, talked about what you just described. But I think the court was clear on that. Our state is one of those states who said marriage should be what marriage has always been and supports traditional marriage. We passed that in our state back in, I think, 2004. So a few years ago. But the court was very clear that they want this decision was about protecting the sanctity of human life and letting that question be discussed and decided in the political context of the legislatures and the respective states.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thank you so much, Congressman Jim Jordan. I always appreciate having you. There's always so much more to talk about. So I hope you'll come back soon. And thank you so much again for fighting for this country, for standing up for things like the sanctity of life, and for pro-American ideas. There are too few of you in Congress. So thank you.
Thank you, Jenna. Take care.
Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903. MyPillow is having their biggest sheet sale of the year. You all have helped build MyPillow into the amazing company that it is today. Now, Mike Lindell, the inventor and CEO, wants to give back exclusively to you, his listeners. The Percale bed sheet set is available in a variety of colors and sizes, and they are all on sale. So, for example, the queen size is regularly priced at $89.98, but is now only $39.98 with our listener promo code Jenna, Jenna. So order now, because when they're gone, they're gone. The Percale bed sheets are breathable and have a cool and crisp feel. These come with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee, so don't miss out on this incredible offer. There's a limited supply, so be sure to order now. You can call 1-800-564 8475 and use the promo code Jenna, or go to mypillow.com/Jenna. You can click on the radio listeners square and use the promo code Jenna. That's JENNA. Thank you so much to all of Mike Lindell's listeners and listeners of this podcast for making sure to support MyPillow and using our exclusive listener promo code Jenna. That's JENNA.